Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us today on this webinar, Automating Editorial, Maximizing MASV with the OWC Jellyfish. I'm joined here today by two incredible people who have a wealth of knowledge, and I'm really looking forward to digging into a workflow with them. On the OWC side, we have our Senior Workflow Engineer, Connor Sterling.
Hey John, happy to be here.
And on the MASV side, we have Solutions Architect, Matt Sobkowitz.
Hi John, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Really looking forward to chatting with you today. Matt, if you want to start us off by just filling us in a little bit on what is MASV?
Yeah, so MASV is a large file transfer solution built entirely in the cloud. One of the reasons why we built MASV is we wanted something that was easy and simple to use for anybody, right? And so for that reason, we actually built MASV so it could be used entirely in the browser with no plugins or anything like that needed to be installed. So if you can reach a website like Instagram.com or OWC.com, you can use MASV 100% of the time for all your uploads and downloads. And the added benefit with the browser with MASV is we can achieve up to 5 gigabits per second in that browser. We also do have a desktop application for those pro users who want just a more feature-rich experience. And using the desktop application, we can achieve up to 10 gigabits per second. And for all these solutions that I mentioned, the browser and the desktop application, these are all built off our fully open API, which lets anyone build their own solution using our technology, right? So if you're kind of using MASV from a hotel room for on set, MASV can be used for those locations. And the added benefit is there's no IT required or plugins needed to be installed to use MASV.
Amazing. And Connor, if you could fill us in a little bit on the other side, on the OWC side, what is a Jellyfish?
A Jellyfish is a high-performance shared storage solution designed for post-production workflows. So it features a really easy user management interface that makes it simple for you to manage things like permissions, monitor your storage usage, all without the need of a dedicated IT team. The Jellyfish also includes a suite of software aimed at video creators to accelerate their media workflows.
Amazing. That's very cool. So let's go ahead and take this step by step through a workflow. As we go along, I'd like to talk about how tools like the OWC Jellyfish and MASV can work together in every step of the process. Let's start when the cameras have stopped rolling. In this case, we're shooting in a remote location and we need to get our files offloaded and backed up. So what do? Let's talk about the remote ingest from the MASV side.
Yeah, so when it comes to remote ingest, a lot of production teams and creators, they like to follow the 3-2-1 backup rule. The idea here is to have copies of your files in multiple locations for safekeeping, right? So the idea here is to have 2 copies in maybe in a cloud storage environment, like an S3 bucket or Wasabi bucket, but then also have it available for storage onto maybe an LTO tape or a USB drive. Then finally, a third copy, which may go into a offsite storage location. So just for safekeeping. So using MASV with our variety of cloud integrations, along with our MASV portals, you can now perform a single upload into MASV and have it set to automatically copy into one of those cloud integrations. So not only are the files automatically copied to your cloud integrations, but because MASV has those files, they're also available as a local download. So anybody with that download link now can download those files, but also using a desktop application can set up a download automation and have those files being automatically saved into a system like an OWC Jellyfish.
Cool. And can we talk a little bit about, Matt, the MASV portal and maybe a quick setup of that and also the bonus of the 10 days of storage?
So when it comes time to using our MASV portals, they're extremely easy to set up. We give you 2 options to set one up. One is either an instant portal. Just like it sounds, there are no bells or whistles to it. We just provide you a link to a non-branded MASV portal. Otherwise, you can fully customize your portal, right? You can put your own company logo, a background image, maybe some sort of custom messaging. But the other nice thing with our portals, you can also add a custom metadata form, right? So if you need to capture certain information from in the field, from on set, from whatever the case may be, you can create a custom form to receive that submission information. All portals can be set up to copy those files into one of our pre-configured cloud integrations, right? So now you can maybe copy those files directly into your S3 bucket or into a Frame.io project. But also alongside our desktop application, you can also copy this directly onto an OWC Jellyfish system using our download automations in that desktop application. And the nice thing with our MASV portals is that with that single upload, it can be sent to any person, machine, or cloud. And we give you 10 days of free storage with that, right? So you don't need to copy those files immediately. Within those 10 days of free storage, you can copy those files to another cloud storage service or send them to another person or be downloaded using our application at any point within those 10 free days.
Can we talk a little bit about how you can set up a MASV automation to download from a portal?
So using our desktop application, we have a few built-in automations. One is a watch folder automation, and the other is our download automation. So this is when the MASV portal can really help in automating your workflow. So basically how this works is at the moment an upload completes into a portal, the automation will grab that uploaded content and start downloading it. Traditionally, what happens is MASV will send out an email to the recipients and let them know that a download is ready for download. And then basically you either get started manually in the browser or in the application. But with the automation now in place, this will automatically start within a few seconds of that upload being completed. And as long as the desktop application is running, or again, we do have a transfer agent, which is kind of a headless version of that same application is running, it will start that download. Again, this is available both for Mac, Windows, and Linux machines.
Amazing. So we're wrapping up the ingest here. We've uploaded our files through the MASV portal. Let's get to Editorial. Once that MASV portal is set up, what does it look like on the Jellyfish side, Connor? How does an end user connect to the Jellyfish?
So connecting to a Jellyfish is really easy. Jellyfish has always been known as a direct connect NAS, and we do that featuring 10 gigabit ports. And so that's really helpful for editors and people who are transferring media because we can take advantage of that full 10 gig speed. And what every Jellyfish ships with is something called Jellyfish Connect, and that's a lightweight desktop app that automates the setup process for you. Anyone who's ever set up a NAS before knows that it can be a bit of a headache, especially if you don't know what you're doing. And Jellyfish Connect is meant to simplify that. So taking your 10 gigabit connection, either plugging it directly into your workstation, into the Jellyfish, or going through a network switch, Connect will automatically discover the Jellyfish and then configure that port and IP address. So once that's done, you can log in as your user and you can start mounting shares, and they show up just like an external hard drive would on your desktop, and you can start moving media there. In this case, once we have that MASV portal set up, we can actually use Jellyfish Connect to automatically connect to the Jellyfish and download those assets directly to the Jellyfish so people can start working.
How does the hardware provide the proper performance for collaborative editing?
So a Jellyfish is built on ZFS, and that uses a 3-tiered caching system to deliver the performance that editors expect when they're working. We're able to offer collaborative workflows for apps like Avid Media Composer, DaVinci Resolve, and Adobe Premiere. And when it comes to media production, collaboration is really the name of the game. The more quickly that people can access and preview and tag their footage, the faster they can actually start creating. So all the files are in one place where everybody has access to them.
Awesome. So what are the benefits of a collaborative workflow in general?
So once the download from the portal has finished, we can then have multiple editors start performing multiple jobs, such as tagging and backing up files. Jellyfish comes with a light media asset manager called Kino for Jellyfish, and that'll allow users to tag their media, add metadata, and then they can actually ingest that metadata to their NLE of choice, whether that be Avid Media Composer, DaVinci Resolve, Adobe Premiere, or even Final Cut. And then while all that footage is being ingested, it can also be backed up to LTO or another archival storage format.
Cool. And is something like Adobe Premiere Productions on a Jellyfish a suggested workflow?
Yeah, Adobe Premiere Productions works really well on a Jellyfish. And for those who don't know, Adobe Premiere Productions is a form of collaborative editing that allows multiple editors to work inside the same project and access the same footage and pass timelines back and forth really seamlessly. And it's built to work on shared storage like Jellyfish. And we have customers that are successfully using that right now. And I can't say enough good things about Productions, just in terms of performance as well. We all know that Adobe Premiere can get a little bloated sometimes when you have large project sizes. And projects in Adobe Productions are able to be broken up into smaller chunks and perform a lot better, and especially if you have a large team.
Amazing. So everyone can be working at full resolution. They can get to their final product sooner. Nobody's sort of having to explain away why it looks like this, or zooming in, or doing sort of post-production fixes and explaining to a client, for example, why something isn't at the finished product. So you upload your files with MASV at full resolution, and you're working on your Jellyfish in full resolution. Happy client, happy editors all the way across the board. That's fantastic. So let's jump ahead to color. Once Editorial is done, you want to move on to color. Where do we start, Connor?
So since we're working inside of Adobe Premiere, a tool I really like to use is actually called Project Management. And so this makes it really easy to select only the footage that you've used inside your timeline, and you can actually copy that to another folder entirely to send that off.
So how can that tie into something like MASV, Matt?
So using Adobe Premiere Project Management, this is where using our watch folder automations in the desktop application really comes in handy. Like Connor mentioned earlier, Premiere will only copy the assets used in the timeline to wherever you specify, which is important because obviously you don't want to be copying files that are not being used. So as long as Project Management copies its files into the specific watch folder where we're listening on, MASV will wait until those files complete, and then once ready, you can start uploading those files. Again, you can specify as part of the automation to a specific recipient or into a specific MASV portal.
Once MASV has uploaded those files, what happens to those files on the watch folder?
Yeah, so once the watch folder has grabbed the files and completed the upload to the intended recipients or to the MASV portal, depending on how the watch folder was configured, the files can either remain in the specified folder or more than likely you're going to want to delete those files just to save on disk space. MASV can actually go ahead and delete those files. Again, the important thing here is to make sure these are copies, not the originals. So whoever is setting up the automation needs to ensure that they're not deleting the originals and that these are actually copies from that project management process. In the meantime, again, while all this is happening, MASV is still waiting in the background for the next batch of files to come into that watch folder to be sent once again.
Talk to me a little bit about the experience of the person receiving those files. What does it look like?
Yeah, so MASV has a few ways to notify users that files are ready for download. If a recipient was specified as part of that delivery, they will receive an email from MASV with a unique download link, which they can then follow either again in the browser or using our desktop application. We also have the ability to set up notifications directly using Slack or Microsoft Teams. So that way, if there's a group channel that you're all listening on, you can kind of see those notifications in real time directly in those, again, either in Slack or Microsoft. Alternatively, instead of relying on those notifications, again, as long as a desktop application is running a download automation, the files will automatically be downloaded to their specified location, which kind of just takes away that delay in receiving files. Again, you'll still receive that email notification, but now you don't have to wait to click on that link and start the download. The content will already be received in your specified system.
That's amazing. That sounds like it's a really useful tool depending on the relationship that the colorist and the editor, and if you're bringing on freelancers or things like that, the email notification seems like they would be a really helpful tool. But if you're a frequent collaborator, maybe those automatic download files are going to be saving you time and making your workflow even more efficient. So at some point along the way during color, the director or the producer or the client is seeing this finished product, and in our case we're shooting some rally footage, and let's say the client decides they want more smoke, or they want to see an alien invasion or a sky replacement, if we're being a little bit more realistic. How would we be able to handle VFX in this case? Like, how do we move the files back to a different group of people?
Yeah, for sure. So visual effects is where things can get really tricky. Everything up to this point has kind of been pretty straightforward, but it's important when you're dealing with visual effects as an editor that you keep things organized. So that means creating labels for shots, having dedicated folder structures that kind of make sense for everyone to tackle the work together. And with a Jellyfish, the performance is there for when you need to render image sequences for visual effects artists, because frequently they request image sequences, and that's great. We want to be able to deliver what's best for them to do their work. And it's also important to make sure in this scenario that the plates go to the colorist as well as the visual effects artists. The colorist is there to make sure there's no color shifts and everything stays the same, so they can compare the original shot, which we'll call the plate, to the actual version of the shot and make sure that, you know, the elements that don't need to shift haven't shifted. And then this part of the process really benefits from having the ability to access the full quality and full resolution files. And it's important that you have a shared storage solution that can support that bandwidth for playback of those files, and the Jellyfish can absolutely deliver that.
So these files are big. How does MASV handle these bigger sort of image sequences?
When it comes to MASV, because we know the types of files and their file sizes being used in post-production, transferring files in the traditional way isn't as efficient. When I mean traditional, I mean in sequential order. When MASV transfers files, we will break up the files into smaller pieces and do parallel uploads of those smaller pieces. This allows us to take more advantage of the available bandwidth and obviously giving a better performance to MASV for those file transfers.
One thing Connor touched on this is the importance of staying organized and maintaining folder structure. How does MASV handle that?
Yeah, so that's a nice feature of MASV, wherein we will preserve the folder structure exactly on how files were uploaded into MASV. So if you have a root folder which has maybe say like 10 to 50 to 100,000 files, and it's a 10 level deep folder structure, MASV will ensure that when that package gets downloaded, it's an exact match, right? The idea with MASV is we'll send whatever you give us. We've even seen in a few instances where people will send a file with emojis in the file name, right? And MASV does preserve that, right? As long as the operating system does recognize those characters, we will send and receive those files. Same thing goes for empty folders, right? Some camera systems or applications create empty folders in their folder structures, which is kind of a requirement for certain applications to run or to grab certain files from folders. Again, MASV will preserve that folder structure from upload to download.
That's amazing. I know that, you know, editors in general by trade need to be organized, and you don't want to mess with their file structure. So this is important, and I love that MASV is respecting that. It's going to be really helpful. No fear, editors out there. You don't have to worry about your folder structure being messed with. So, okay, we're done with VFX. The sky replacement is in. The dust is there. Everybody's happy. How do we get everything finished and back into one place? Matt, if you want to talk about maybe upload rules there.
Yeah, so within every portal, we recently added the ability for users to set some restrictions. That includes things like file extension types, but also the size of the package, right? This is useful for those projects that are just looking to receive final deliverables. They could be MOV, MP4, MXF file formats, but they don't want PDFs or JPEGs or anything else that is not really required for their project. So now within each portal, we've added a rules section, which allows you to customize the file extension, but also things like the naming of the package name, right? So you can specify a certain regex expression, then that way that enforces the user who has to set that on upload. That way, kind of to your earlier point, this lets kind of the post-production team staying organized on what packages they're receiving, and just keeping things kind of tidy and nice and clean within that kind of workflow for that particular user.
So Connor, when we're ready for final delivery, how do we receive materials on the Jellyfish?
Yeah, so once we've received everything through that massive portal, we can actually compile the project back together back in Premiere or another piece of software and hit that render button. And with those rendered assets, those final assets, anybody who's connected to the Jellyfish can have access to those so that they can put them where they belong, whether that's a producer uploading a feature film, or in this case, something that needs to go to the web into various platforms, or an assistant editor who needs to pull down those final assets and back them up to LTO, to a backup solution like an on-premise solution like our B24, or to the cloud through our native cloud integration. So we can back things up to AWS, Wasabi, Backblaze, and Azure. And after that, all that's really left is get ready for the next project.
Connor, thank you so much. Matt, thank you so much. Is there anything else you guys would like to say?
No, just wanted to thank both of you for letting us showcase how MASV can empower an end-to-end workflow within a Jellyfish system and the collaboration that we have with OWC. So again, just want to thank you both.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us, John. And at the end of the day, what I think we've really talked a lot about is kind of post-production without the need for IT at the end of the day. This is something that editors, any kind of level of post-production company could get up and running with, whether that's simplifying file transfers like MASV does, or setting up a Jellyfish, which Jellyfish does via its software suite like Connect and Manager, and also asset managers like Kino for Jellyfish. So this has been great, and thank you so much, John.
We hope that learning a little bit about MASV and Jellyfish and how they can work together can improve your post-production workflow.